All right. Hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined all the way across the world in South Africa, in Durban. First time we've had somebody on from Durban, South Africa, by Alan Versteeg. How are you doing, Alan?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me on the show and welcome to your guests.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alan is an engineer turned sales management expert. And you initially, as a lot of people do, approach the sales world with some skepticism, but you've turned it into a thriving career by applying the engineering principles of cause and effect to sales and sales management. You co-founded Growth Matters, where Alan and your team you have developed over 2,000 sales managers across 45 countries and diverse industries. And that's what we want to talk about today. Is I want to talk about uh, sales coaching, because I do think your sales coaching is such a say a lot of people talk about it, but very few people know how to do it properly. Because a lot of times people's idea of coaching kind of goes back to high school, or their sports teams or whatever, and it's just basically somebody on the sideline shouting at you, telling you what to do. And 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 a lot of then sales, top sales people are then put into sales leadership and management positions, but nobody ever teaches them how to coach. And coaching is not an innate skill that most people have, right?
Not at all. And when you touch on the challenges, and as you've said, John, it's such a critical component to performance. You're not going to find a single research paper that doesn't say the number one thing you can do is effective coaching. So if you look at that just from a simple lens of a business perspective and go, okay, so if this is the number one lever we can pull to drive an increase in sales performance, why are we not doubling down? And I'm sure in the podcast we talk about a whole bunch of those
Mhm.
challenges. I'll start with the first one. It's the first meeting canceled and the last metric measured.
Mm.
So because we're so busy doing the doing, we don't get to the things that coach our people to performance.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, some of it stems obviously from the fact that we don't train people how to coach. We don't teach them how to coach, so that we're putting somebody into a role and into a position that they're not equipped for. So obviously, when you try to do something that you don't have the skills to do, chances of success are pretty slim, right?
100% right. So, a great hairdresser doesn't automatically run a great hair salon. A great chef doesn't automatically run a great restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And a great salesperson doesn't automatically become a great sales coach. So, definitely one of the issues outside of making sure they have time is actually understanding the skill. And very importantly, John, understanding the nuanced but critical difference between when we're managing, when we're mentoring, and when we're coaching. So many times managers think they're coaching, but at observation, it's normally a mentorship or management conversation.
Mhm. So tell me, so explain to the audience the difference between, because I think some people would maybe confuse coaching and mentoring.
Yeah, I mean, the best metaphor is to, if you consider in coaching, you're the GPS, not the driver. You're guiding people to a destination you're aware of, but you're letting them drive. In mentoring, you're saying, watch me drive, watch the route I'm taking, watch where
Mhm.
I'm going. So mentoring is a lot about sharing the skill sets we have. And the thing with mentoring is it's highly efficient, but it's not highly effective. So it's much quicker to tell someone, why don't you just do this or why don't you just do that? And you should do that. And I used to do this. It's
Mhm.
very different to the patience of question-based coaching, where we're guiding people to their own awareness. We're not stealing their thinking. We're giving them the space to identify and then identifying the key actions we're wanting to take. But we default to, oh, this is frustrating. We grab the steering wheel and we drive them to the destination. And we have to do it day in and day out, never actually developing the people we manage.
Yeah, because one of the hardest things, I mean, I think this is the thing that a lot of people struggle with, in even in management, is allowing people to do things maybe slightly differently than you would do them, and as long as they're getting the result and it's having the right outcome, then being able to sort of take a step back and go, okay, maybe I wouldn't do it that way, but that's okay that they're doing it that way.
Yeah, I think it is a challenge because, we want to duplicate what we understand.
Mhm.
But if we level just up a bit, there's a wonderful book by David Rock called Quiet Leadership. And it's really about the neuroscience of coaching. And what it explains is we are, I think it's 8 times more likely to take an action we've created ourselves.
Hmm.
And the reason being is we've already internalized our personality, our identity, our everything into that action. It might be the same action you would have told them to do 25 minutes ago, John,
Right.
but
Yeah.
because they came up with it, they're going to do it their way. When you tell them and they don't do it, they go, "Oh, but you know, John, I'm just not like you. You know, like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
so good at that. You just got the gift of that." And then they excuse away that because we didn't let them learn, we hijacked their thinking.
And I guess part of that, Alan, too, is the fact that, as you said, we don't create the space for sales leaders to be coaches, even to be mentors. To be honest, because, I mean, we put them in that position, and then we go numbers, 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 and what are you going to do if you're in that situation? You are probably just going to parachute in at the end of sales cycles and try and force things over the line, in under the guise of helping the salesperson when all you're doing is really kind of shoving them aside and demoralizing them.
Correct, and it's the big issue I pretty much started with. It's the first meeting cancelled because we're
Mhm.
not giving them the space. We're also not asking the language from a leadership perspective. It's we keep saying we're customer centric. Yes, our account plans are all data driven, not customer value driven. We say we care about the customer value, but we don't coach the sales conversation. We ask them where they're at on their numbers. And the reality is, you just take 5 steps back and you can see this isn't working. It's not scalable. It's not sustainable, and it's not customer orientated.
Mhm.
However, the number doesn't go away. The quarterly pressure doesn't go away, and everyone's driving that. And even when you take something like coaching someone through a pipeline, helping a deal get momentum, often the thing they need to do is obvious to say, but that doesn't mean they understand how to do it. And that's the difference in coaching. We start to internalize the behavior before practicing it, and then have a level of a believability to do that. Because without that believability, I just go, yeah, easy for you to say, Al, I'm not you.
Yeah, yeah, and just going back to that thing about time and that, because let's face it, if I say to you, Alan, like, okay, I really want to help you, and we're going to do coaching sessions, and I'm going to do a coaching session once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever it is, and maybe I do the first one. And then maybe the second one, I'm a bit busy, so I say, "Oh, Alan, do we just cancel this week? We'll do it next week." But eventually, you're taking your cues and saying, "Okay, this isn't important. You don't really care about coaching, and therefore, I'm having the opposite effect. It's a demotivating effect."
100% correct. Because what we don't do is the number one thing we have to do. We have to protect the one-on-one coaching culture. Then your second thing that you mentioned on this call, we need to understand how to coach very practically. I can take you through a model shortly.
Yep.
And then what we need to make sure we're doing is we're coaching against the right thing.
Mhm.
Because you got to coach against a framework for pipeline. You have to coach against this area. You got to coach against a methodology. You can't just be coaching, and this isn't a life coaching thing. And that's another thing that's gotten confused. This life coaching view of it, which is to motivate you. And that's partly part of it. But
Mhm.
what about my pipeline? What about my value conversations? What about my accounts? What about my opportunities? Those are different coaching conversations. Same framework, but we're coaching against something different. And if you're not protecting a minimum of 1 hour a week one-on-one with your people, you're not getting to the coaching. You're just getting the data out of their heads, or as you say, John, doing the job for them.
Yeah. So let's take me. Let's go through your coaching framework so people can get a better understanding of what real coaching looks like.
Well, the key thing to understand, and once again, this comes from the work of David Rock, is when we ask questions, we can hijack people's thinking.
Hmm.
And it's easier to change their thinking than it is to change their behavior. And I'm going to give you an example, right? So if John, you walk into the office, you're a sales guy, and I say, John, where you been? And you say, no, I was at Acme Corp. And okay, great. The reception table. What was the shape of the reception desk? And you're like, why? And I'm saying, well, just tell me. And then you say, no, it was like a half moon oval. And say,
Mm.
great. Reception, male or female, non binary, what was it? And you tell me. And then I walk away and you're going, I don't get this. I ask you that the day later and I ask you the day after. Involuntarily, you will start walking into reception rooms and noticing these three things. It's
Mm.
called your reticular activating system, but it's just three questions. Now, imagine if my question was, John, what specifically in the client's business is going to change as a result of them working for us? What will happen over time is that sales professional will walk into a call and say to the customer, but what specifically are you hoping will change as a result of working with us? So that's how we hijack the thinking.
Hmm.
And the models, it's quite simple. It's called ICE: identify the gap, clarify the root cause, explore the action. Explore the action. So your first questions are identifying where that gap sits. Let's say, for example, in a deal, is it because there's not a
Right.
genuine opportunity, or we're not relevant? Or, so we identify the gap, but we got to take the patience to get that. And we go, okay, but why do you think that is? No, it's just been difficult to get to power because of this. Okay, what are the other reasons? Well, it's this. Okay, great. So if that's the root cause, what do you think you could do about it? No, I don't
Hmm.
know. Okay, but if you did know, what would that be? Well, actually, no. Now that you say that, and that's when the moment happens. It's called the impulse in the brain, and that's when behavior starts to change. Well, the thinking starts to change. It drives that behavior. So
Hmm.
identify the gap, clarify the root cause, and explore the action. Now, the root cause and the gap might not be perfectly accurate, but the beauty is you've allowed them to direct themselves to a self-owned action, and they are 8 times more likely to take that action. And John,
Right.
that's the power of coaching, because then they start to take their own action. We start to mature their thinking. We start to change their reticular activating system. It's a brain-based task.
Hmm.
And the other thing, it gives them immediate feedback. See, sales, we do something, yeah, but we only get the result here. So we don't
Right.
always know what gets us there.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
coaching, we become like a satellite for a cruise missile and guiding them where they need to get to.
Yeah, because I mean that's the thing is, I mean, and that's why oftentimes, your best salesperson, your top salesperson, the people say like, just do what Alan does. And then I go to Alan and I say, Alan, what do you do? And you go, you can't really actually tell me because you're unconsciously very competent and very good at what it is, but you're not able to codify that or translate that for somebody else.
Correct. And what you just said, you can't codify it, even though you can do the research. So let's take the
Hmm.
the the good the good the good methodologies in our industry. There's some really strong methodologies. They're based on research. They've looked at multiple people. They've looked at patterns of behavior. They turn it into a training program. They develop the people, but they tell the customer you're going to have to coach them against this, and
Yes.
then they don't. If
Hmm.
all it took to understand sales success is what a good model of good looks like, it'd be easy. It's not that. It's the coaching in the trenches. And John, if you think back pre-CRM, before we moved management behind the mouse, that was the infield sales manager.
Hmm.
She was meeting you on the road, you were having coffee, you were coaching, you were at clients together. That was the role, infield sales manager.
Hmm.
And then we pulled that behind the mouse. And that's why we've got to make sure that when we're leveraging our CRM systems, there's a data point for a coaching opportunity. So what CRM does well, it can give us some of that identifying the gap. So we're starting with a kind of thread of where the gap
Yeah.
might be.
Yeah, no, it's a good point because yeah, I mean, let's face it. I mean, the best of those, infield sales managers, the ones doing ride-alongs, the ones who went to meetings, but didn't take over the meeting, like played a
Yeah.
supportive role, and then to talk beforehand, and then and afterwards, then had that kind of debrief conversation where the focus was on you and what you did and how you felt and whatever.
Mm.
It wasn't that other type, which can be replicated in the CRM world, as you said, because you can replicate that command and control piece. But it's really that supportive, that uncovering piece, just what you were talking about, like peeling back the layers and letting you make the discoveries.
Yeah, I mean, CRM is not sales management. CRM is a tool we use as sales managers so that we're not using Rolodexes or
Hmm.
whatever you used to use in your day,
Yeah.
right? And it can be a powerful analytics tool, can be a powerful automation tool. There's no doubt about that. But if selling still remains a fundamentally human
Yeah.
profession, it's going to require human to human coaching,
Hmm.
um, because it brings us to that awareness. Okay, this is where I can grow. This is what I need to do. And there isn't a shortcut for that,
Hmm.
because if it is, then everyone would be a top performing sales professional.
Yeah, and here's another trap I often see people fall into when they think they're coaching and even mentoring. It's this human trait we have where we focus immediately on weakness, right? And we just want to focus and we want to identify a weakness and we're going to work on that instead of focusing on strengths and trying to accentuate those strengths and help improve them. And maybe that might mean at the end of the day I discover, I'd say, well, Alan's just not the greatest door opener. He's not very good at it. And to be honest, I don't think he's ever going to be very good at it, but he's fantastic once the door is open. So maybe I need to reconfigure this job where I can have him walk through more doors as opposed to banging his head against them.
John, that is, I mean, when I say it's a profound, it's insight. It's ahead of the time of what the market's ready to hear. But there's definitely a benefit in what I call pack-based selling. We do it in our business. I know my strengths. I know my partner's strengths. I know when it gets very technical and it's the, dot the I's, cross the T's, just exit me because I'm going to drop the ball. I
Mhm.
know when it's motivational, when it's a keynote, I can play in that space. And I think that's the beauty, to understand not everyone has to be everything. You don't
Yeah.
always have to, because what do they say? When you teach the squirrel to fly and the eagle to climb, they both get bad at everything.
Yes.
Right? So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you're identifying those uniquenesses. And we also have a lot of biases. I mean, there was a research paper, I forget who did it, but 0.03% difference in sales success between an introvert and an extrovert. In
Hmm.
any statistical, that's insignificant.
Yeah.
But yet we still have this job. But you got the gift of the gab. And I believe it's not that. I think there's a great author, Lisa McLeod. You got to sell with noble purpose. If you're
Hmm.
doing that, you can work through the weaknesses, but also pull on the pack. Who else in your team can help you do those things? And I think we still treat it way too individually,
Yeah.
not to the benefit of the customer.
Yeah, but we even call it, don't we? We still call it terms like the individual contributor and, the lone wolf and all this kind of thing, and we still kind of celebrate a lot of that. And the reality is today that it's almost impossible to sell on your own. You are supported. I mean, quite honestly, if you're in B2B sales, I mean, you're not selling to one individual either. You're selling to groups of people often, and therefore you internally you're also using groups of people to help you sell. So that idea, I think, is its time has come where you look at the strengths of people. Because I mean, you do coaching. I mean, how much fun is it coaching to strengths as opposed to trying to coach to weaknesses?
It's always better to coach the strengths. But even then, John, you can understand someone's strengths and weaknesses,
Mhm.
but still get them to understand. Because if you think about the ICE model,
Yeah,
the E is explore the actions. A good
yeah.
coaching conversation always ends with an agreed action. So, what's the next action I can take to increase the health of my pipeline? What's the next action I can take to increase the yield on this account? What's the next action I can take to increase my chance of winning this opportunity? You don't have to think about the whole staircase, just the next step. And we're coaching those steps. And
Mm.
over time, they'll develop their own uniqueness and personality and authenticity into good sales skills. And there's going to be some things they never master. But I always find, if I'm having to coach door opening, that means my house is in order. I've got a healthy pipeline. I've got deals. A lot of those things we're not even getting to yet because they're not getting to some of those fundamentals that the infield manager used to do well.
Yeah, and I love what you just said there about, you're coaching to the next step, because I think that's another trap that we often fall into. It's like, we try to either coach too much, we try to move too far forward, or we try to coach to some nebulous kind of destination, as opposed to just saying, if we can improve this next step, or we can, I can help you uncover the next best step to take. I mean, that's over time. Obviously, every next best step is, moves you forward. But I think that kind of micro focusing is something that a lot of people overlook, and especially when it comes to coaching, because they tend to get a little too general.
I mean, the word you've used, which is nebulous, is the right word. It's to no destination. And it's also a lot of this. I mean, I don't want to be too insulting, but Instagram coaching,
Right.
where we're doing more counseling and mentoring than coaching. Coaching is to something. You're
Mhm.
in this deal. Let me help this person identify the next action. Their pipeline's not healthy. Let me help them identify the next action. Because when it's to that nebulous direction, you end up not coaching because you're not actually seeing the value as a manager. You're going, I don't know why I'm protecting this in my calendar because it's not actually driving what it promised it would drive.
Mhm.
But often because, as you started, John, we haven't been trained how to do this properly. And for me, it's not always the skill, it's the science. Like understand the neuroscience behind why coaching is so powerful, and then figure out your own acronym or your own way, your own favorite approach. But you
Mhm.
got to know why it's so powerful. And that's because we hijack the thinking of the brain when we ask good questions.
Yeah. But I think that's the point there that we really need to underline. And I think that's something, the most profound thing that, to come out of this interview, to be honest, Alan, is for people to understand is when you're coaching and you're coaching to the next step, is then there's no way you can see it as a waste of your time, or as not or as something, because you're seeing it actually impact immediately, or or in the very near future. So there's a sense of momentum there. So therefore,
Correct.
why wouldn't I look forward to that coaching call, because we move the ball forward a little bit.
100%, John. And what you're doing is you're helping me identify the blind spot. So it becomes a rewarding
Yeah.
thing for me, not an audit. That's the other thing that managers get wrong, is they turn it into an audit. Let me grill you on these 79 questions because they're coaching questions. That's not a
Yeah.
coaching question. That's an audit. A coaching question is help them to identify the gap, clarify the root cause, and get to the action. And then they can get that momentum. And then they're keen to come in because they know you're going to help them see
Yeah.
something they
And I
can't
love
see.
that, Alan, because I think what you've just outlined now is where the mutual win-win, the mutual benefit for both the sales leader and the salesperson is there, that you're both, and that point where you're both looking forward to that call because you're both getting something out of it. And together you're getting even more.
100%. And then it won't be canceled. It'll be protected in the calendar and it'll become the way we do things around here. There'll be a
Yeah.
discipline of coaching. Um, but we cannot blame them if we don't train them and we haven't
Yeah,
developed them as
absolutely. Listen,
coaches.
fantastic. All of Alan's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do tell people a little bit more about you and what you do, Alan.
Pretty much, I'm a co-founder of a business called Growth Matters International. Our core focus is sales management development. For the reasons I shared earlier, we take our top performing people, promote them into sales management without a system in place to prepare them. And then we lose a great salesperson and we gain a mediocre manager. So if you're not developing sales managers, you're not unlocking your technology, your methodologies, your consulting, or anything. So that's our core focus. We work with some nice big international customers, and that's pretty much what
Excellent.
Alan
Well,
does.
listen, thank you again. And like I said, all of Alan's information will be below this video. So thanks again, Alan. Thank you for watching and listening. I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.